Okay. The one question you can ask yourself that will change your life. And so,
Hey there. I have been advised by the YouTube gods to say like, subscribe, and share the video. So now back to the video.
that question involves something called values. And you may say, what the hell is that? So, and the reason it's so important is because a value it's something that you prize, that you enjoy, that you want, that you need to have in your life, that makes you feel good deep inside. It can be a character, it can be people, it can be an activity. A value can be anything in your life specifically that you want, need, and really love about life because it brings you energy. So for example, values are things like I value freedom, I value creativity, I value adventure, I value learning and growth. So all these things are really important in my life. So no matter what I choose for a job or to do as a business or the relationships I have, I can measure against my values. And if these things aren't bringing me that value that I need in my life, then they're going to bring me the opposite, which is misery in my life. And so for values, the way to evaluate a value, it's funny, is to ask yourself, like, what in my life would I not trade for $1 million? So for example, I would not trade my freedom for $1 million. And I would not trade my ability to be entrepreneurial or creative for $1 million. I would not trade the ability to be honest or to learn for $1 million, because I would have to eliminate those in my life. And then what would my life be without those? It wouldn't be exciting. It wouldn't be energizing. It wouldn't be getting the things out of life that I want. So those are values. So the question that will change your life is, what are your values? And you can even make it easier and say, what are your top 5 values? Because you could look at values as anything from courage to family to a craft that you're doing to a career. So people value, being artists. People value being musicians, but people also value being like a craftsman or a carpenter or being able to build things. They also value family and having a family and being in a family, or they value community. There's a whole bunch of things that you can value, and there are a lot of really good values out there. And the great thing about values is they're always positive in the sense of, like, they bring life. So, drugs or alcohol are not values because they essentially harm your life. But exercise and fitness and health could be values as well. So that question, which is, what are your real core values, is the question that needs to be answered. The reason I say that it will change your life is because if you understand your core values, they are like a rudder on a ship. And if you don't know what a rudder is what steers a ship. So let's say you don't have a steering capability on a ship. You're just going to float aimlessly around in the ocean. If you have a rudder, then you can go where you want to go. And so knowing what your values are and aligning all of your decisions with your values is going to enable you to steer to the place that you want to go and that you are happiest. So if you value family, and let's say you get an intimate relationship, you're not going to want to get into an intimate relationship with someone who doesn't value family and doesn't want kids and doesn't like being around your family, because you're going to have a miserable relationship. You want to align yourself with people that have similar values, and that's how you get the best out of life. And so I'll give you an example. Like when I was younger and I started my clothing company, it's because I loved design. That was one of my values, was like being creative and designing t-shirts and designing pants and all these things, and that was a very much a value for me. And I also valued adventure, but I didn't really understand these things at a core level. Like, and I mean core level by like, I never stated them to myself. I never was like made them verbally or made them very conscious. And so in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to do these pants that I have, and I'm going to make it an adventure. And so what I realized later on was that, you know, adventure, the freedom to do my own thing with my own company, creativity in my company, those were all very, very core values for me as a human. And I realized that like 20 years later. And what happened with my company specifically is that it steered into the realm where, you know, I first started out and I used it as an excuse to travel across the country because I grew up poor and I didn't travel anywhere, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted to see more about the country, and that was Canada and actually the US as well. And so when I started my clothing company, I was like, I'm going to travel to places, to events, to concerts, and I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to promote my clothing and sell clothing to people and meet people. And I was like, this is what I wanted. And I was like, this is a great little package. What I didn't realize was I was being very, very true to my core values. And so later on, when the company started getting bigger and growing, and I ended up in a windowless office, basically babysitting people, 40-something employees, and I was miserable. And I didn't know why I was miserable. And it was because I was no longer aligning my decisions with my core values and doing those things. I no longer had the freedom, the adventure, the creativity, because I was managing employees. I wasn't being the designing and doing the creative fun stuff. I wasn't out on the road doing the adventurous stuff, and I felt like I didn't have any freedom. I was stuck in an office, and I didn't want to be stuck in an office. So it was years later when I started to realize my core values. I was like, oh, that's why I hated what I was doing. I was going for money, and I was doing what society was telling me I should be doing as the owner of a company and managing it and growing it, and growth was the thing and all that stuff like that. And I was like, this sucks. And it was because it wasn't aligned with my core values. And I mean, someone else might have been doing the same thing, and it could have been very much aligned with their core values. But for me, it just wasn't. And so the easier way to understand your core values when you're trying to answer that question is to go, okay, what would be like my top 5 core values? And what you do is you look around you and you say, okay, what are the objects in my house? Like, what is on my night table? Are there certain books that are on my night table? Is there certain things in my house? Is there a bunch of sports gear laid all around? Is there like tools or equipment, or am I at my desk and there's very, very obvious evidence of the things that I really, really like doing? And then you ask yourself, okay, what do I spend my disposable income on when I've paid all my rent and all that other stuff? What are the activities that I will spend my money on? How much time do I spend on certain activities? So you chart your time over like a day and over a week, and you're like, what do I spend all my time on? What you can do as well is ask yourself, what do people ask for my advice on? Another question is, you know, what are the things you do that really energize you, that really make you feel good inside, and that you're like, when you're doing them, you're just like, oh, this feels awesome. So for example, when I'm engaged in entrepreneurial stuff and helping people solve problems and potentially create businesses that they really, really love, that really inspires me, and I get a lot of energy from that. So I advise people on how to take their passions and turn them into businesses to a certain extent, so that they can, you know, honor their craft and they can do things they really, really love. And then you want to ask yourself, okay, well, what are your strengths? What would your family and your friends say that are the things that they see that you are really, really good at? And so once you start to answer all of those questions, you will start to see patterns. And here's the thing. The things that you value could be as simple as you value listening to people, or you value, you know, giving people information that they may not know, or you value doing woodwork, or you value, obviously family, things like that. And then you try and create that top 5 so you can really, really see, what your core values are. And then you start to look at your life and ask yourself, okay, in my past, where have these values been very, very aligned in what I'm doing? And what does that look like? Am I excited? Do I love what I'm doing? And where have they been not so aligned? Look at your jobs, or look at your businesses. If you start to take your core values and you go, okay, where in my business or in my job am I aligned with my core values and where am I unaligned? And then you'll probably see where you don't like what you're doing when they're not aligned with your core values. And that is why it's the most important question to answer for yourself, because then you're going to start to really, really get to know deep inside what makes you feel good and what makes you energized and what basically gets you up in the morning. And the more that you align your life and what you do and the people that you're around and the communities that you're in and the hobbies and activities that you do around those core values, the more you'll start to see an increase in your energy and in your appreciation and in your happiness. And ultimately, that's where you want to go. And that's why your values as a rudder and almost as like the barriers to like where you go. It's like, okay, am I aligned with my values? If I'm a little bit off, I'm going to get a little bit more misery. But if I'm straight on and I'm aligned with my values, then you're going to maximize your enjoyment, your energy, and your happiness in life. Hope that helps. Way more to come. Have a good one.